Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be reading from a subreddit called They Killed One Human. Earth's response shocked the galaxy. So let's jump into it. They killed one human. Earth's response shocked the galaxy. Hello, this is the first contact scenario. Humans are still a primitive species stuck in their stone age. When an alien vessel arrives in orbit of Earth, the ship descends slowly, almost hesitantly, toward the surface. A single humanoid figure emerges from the ship and slowly makes its way to a populated area. He walks with purpose, ignoring the looks and questions of passers-by. His destination? A crowded marketplace. The being was humanoid but obviously alien. Tall and thin, he had long, spindly fingers with sharp claws at the tips. His skin was the color of dried blood and stretched tightly over his sharp cheekbones. Large black eyes dominated his face, devoid of any whites or pupils, and two small slits served as his nostrils, flaring slightly as he took in the sights and smells of the market. His head was shaved bald, and from under his armpit protruded four fleshy appendages that dangled and swayed with each step he took. He wore clothing made of what looked like dried leather, held together with strips of hide. At his belt hung a short sword, and a strange staff topped with a spherical object. The people of this primitive world stared after him, afraid to approach or speak to him. Fear, raw and primal, tightened its grip around their chests, making it difficult to breathe. The being stopped before a group of humans, causing them to instinctively cower and shield themselves behind the stalls and carts that lined the market. "Greetings," the being said. His voice echoed with an otherworldly resonance that seemed to vibrate within their bones. "I come in peace." His words, though translated by a device on his chest, were somehow still spoken in his own language, and yet the humans understood him clearly. It was as if the very essence of his voice had been imprinted upon their minds. A moment of silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken tension. The humans remained frozen, trapped in the clutches of their own fear. Finally, one of them, a young man with a defiant spirit, stepped out from behind a cart. "Why have you come?" the man asked, his voice shaking slightly. The being tilted his head, his black eyes unblinking. "To study you." "Study us?" the man scoffed. "What do you want to know?" "Your culture," the being replied. "Your history, your technology," the man snorted. "We have nothing to offer you." The being's eyes narrowed slightly. "Perhaps," he said, his voice devoid of emotion, "but I intend to find out." And with that, he reached out a clawed hand and grabbed the man by the throat. Screams erupted from the crowd as the being lifted the man off his feet with surprising strength. His sharp nails dug into the man's neck, leaving deep red marks in their wake. The man struggled, his face turning purple as he fought for air, but the being's grip was like a vice, cutting off the man's screams and the flow of air to his lungs. In a matter of moments, the life drained from the man's eyes, replaced by the glazed stare of one who has seen the end of their journey. The being dropped the man's body as if it were a discarded doll, and it landed with a thud that echoed the beat of a frightened heart. A pregnant woman screamed, dropping the basket of fruit she had been carrying. The being's eyes turned towards her, and for a moment, the only sound that could be heard was the pounding of her heart. "Why?" she cried out, her voice cracking with terror. "Why did you kill him?" The being tilted his head again, studying her as if she were an insect under a magnifying glass. "He volunteered," he said finally. "He allowed me to end his life so that I could sample it. You see, we Xyla are fascinated by the concept of death." A chill ran down the woman's spine. She had never encountered anything like this being in its kind before. Their advanced technology and chilling fascination with death made them seem like gods to the primitive humans. "Now," the being continued, taking a step closer to the woman, "I would like to sample yours." And with those words, he reached out to grab her. The woman screamed, but her voice was lost in the roar of a jet engine as a silver disc shot out from the sky and smashed into the being's ship, sending debris and smoke billowing into the air. A door hissed open, and a squad of armed soldiers emerged, weapons raised. "Drop your weapon, Alia," one of them shouted. "You're surrounded." The being turned towards the newcomers, his eyes flashing with anger. "Foolish insects," he sneered. "Do you threaten me?" Before any of the soldiers could respond, the being unleashed a blast of energy from his hands. It struck one of the soldiers, sending him flying backwards and crashing into the ground. The other soldiers opened fire, but their bullets seemed to pass right through the being's chest, leaving only scorch marks on his clothes. Furious, the being unleashed another blast, knocking a second soldier to the ground. He advanced towards the remaining soldiers, his eyes blazing with power. "Leave now," one of the soldiers shouted, raising his weapon, "and don't ever come back. We don't want any trouble," the being snarled. But before he could respond, the ground beneath his feet rumbled violently. He stumbled, cursing under his breath, as a large net the size of a house descended from the sky and enveloped him. The soldiers watched as the being struggled against the net, his roars of anger echoing across the land. A loud crack echoed through the air, followed by the hiss of pressurized air escaping. The being slumped to his knees, his chest heaving as he struggled to breathe. "What have you done?" he gasped, his voice raspy. One of the soldiers approached cautiously, his weapon still raised. "We've contained you," he said. "Now we're going to take you back to our ship for questioning." As they dragged the being towards the waiting transport, the humans could not help but stare in awe at the display of power. The soldiers moved with precision and efficiency, securing the being and preparing him for transport. All the while, the being struggled against his restraints, his eyes blazing with hatred. Once secured, the soldiers led the being to the transport, a sleek, metallic sphere that hummed with energy. The being snarled, but the soldiers ignored him, ushering the crowd back to allow access. With the being secured inside, the transport shot upwards, disappearing into the cloudy expanse above. As it descended, the crowd watched in stunned silence, the echo of the being's enraged roars still ringing in their ears. For many of them, this was their first glimpse of the vastness of the universe and the wonders that lay beyond their world. Others were filled with a sense of foreboding, wondering what the future held for them and their kind. "This is the captain of the Starship Enterprise. Our mission, to boldly go where no one has gone before." Meanwhile, aboard the alien ship that had descended into the marketplace, chaos reigned supreme. The Xyla captain stood frozen, his forearms flailing wildly as alarms blared throughout the ship. His co-pilot slumped over, dead. His navigator was kneeling beside him, frantically trying to repair the damage to the ship's communications array. "Report," the captain roared, his voice echoing with fury. "The transmission array is damaged." "Captain," the navigator gasped, his face pale. "They jammed our communication array. We can't raise the flagship. We can't raise anyone." "What about our weapons?" the captain demanded. "They shielded our weapons, too," the navigator stammered. "I can't get a clear reading. It's like their primitive weapons just neutralized all of our defenses." The captain snarled, his eyes blazing with rage. He knew they were in trouble. The last thing he remembered was firing a warning shot at the planet's surface, a shot that should have crippled their communications and defense systems. But instead, something strange had happened. The shot hadn't destroyed the planet's communications. It had disabled their weapons. "We're trapped here," the captain growled, his voice tight with frustration. "They've trapped us." And that was the first time in his life that the Xyla captain had ever admitted defeat. As the hours passed, the situation grew more dire. Their ship was running low on fuel and they were stranded on a backwater planet with no way to contact their flagship for help. The captain paced the bridge, his forearms swinging restlessly. He was a warrior, a conqueror. To be trapped was not just frustrating, it was humiliating. "We need a plan," he finally said, his voice low and dangerous. "If we're going to get out of this, we need a plan." The navigator nodded, his mind racing. "We could try to repair the transmission array," he said tentatively. "If we could get it working, we might be able to send a distress signal. And if they detect us," the captain snarled, "they'll destroy us before we can escape." "No, we need a different plan, a bolder plan." Suddenly, an idea sparked in the navigator's mind. What if we contacted them? What if we asked them for help? The captain stopped pacing and stared at the navigator, his eyes wide with surprise. "Contacted them," he repeated. "How?" "They destroyed our communication systems. We can use their frequencies," the navigator said quickly. "If we can decipher their communication patterns, we may be able to send a message. Maybe we can negotiate, ask them for permission to leave." The captain considered this, weighing the risks and benefits. It was a risky move, but it might be their only chance. "Very well," he finally said. "Let's see what these primitive creatures have to say for themselves." And that's where we'll pick up next time. Thanks so much for watching, and please subscribe for more content.